Welcome villagers, to the village hidden in the stories. I am your guide, KAGE, the creator of all the what-ifs you see on this channel, with your suggestions of course. I hope you like the video we have today. Please comment video ideas, and subscribe if you're new. Today we have What If Naruto Was in Miraculous Ladybug Part 2, and if you can support me, please do so on my Patreon where you can subscribe for $5 to get early updates, text what if transcripts, thumbnails, other arts, and gaming videos. The link will be in the description, so if you can, please help out. So without further ado, let's get into this what if. Part 2, Greater Mysteries. Over the past week, Naruto had settled into his new life in Paris, and honestly, he liked it. He had quickly fallen into a comfortable rhythm, hanging out with Nino and Adrian during school hours. The two were fun to be around, and while Adrian had a bit of a strict schedule thanks to his father, Naruto could tell he appreciated the moments when he could just be a normal teenager. Of course, Naruto had also figured something out: Adrian was chat noir. The realization hadn't taken long. Naruto was naturally observant, and Adrian's frequent disappearances, combined with looks, made it pretty obvious. But just like with Marinette, Naruto kept that secret to himself. It wasn't his place to say anything, and he respected both of them enough to let them reveal it on their own terms. In addition to school and making friends, Naruto had received a package from his family containing some of the things he had requested. His new suit and weapons had finally arrived, allowing him to fight more effectively as Fire Shadow. The suit was a sleek blend of his ninja heritage and modern design, tailored for speed and flexibility while offering some much-needed protection. His new weapons were also a game-changer, giving him more versatility in battle. As Fire Shadow, he had become a real part of the team, saving lives alongside Ladybug and Chat Noir. The three of them had been working well together, and he found himself enjoying the teamwork. He could feel the trust building between them, and that was something he never took lightly. He had discovered that exploring Paris, its culture, history, and physical landscape, was an adventure in itself. He had never run around so much in his life, trying everything he came across and revisiting the same spots multiple times, just in case he had missed something. While he enjoyed studying mythology, given its connection to chakra, what he loved most about exploring was the movement, the way his body felt with every step, every leap, and every climb. It made him feel alive. With everything he had been doing, the week was great. He found himself doing a lot. In fact, he was starting to feel like this was his new home. But there was one thing that had been confusing him all week: Marinette. For some reason, she had started following him everywhere. At first, he thought it was a coincidence. Maybe they just happened to be in the same place at the same time. But as the days passed, it became clear that she was actively trying to stay close to him. It wasn't that she was doing a particularly bad job at it. Marinette was sneaky when she wanted to be, but Naruto wasn't easily caught off guard. He could sense her presence, her footsteps, even the moments when she would duck behind a corner or pretend to be busy with something else when he turned around. And the weirdest part, he had no idea why she was doing it. Was she suspicious of him? Did she think he was up to something, or was this just another one of those odd Parisian habits he hadn't figured out yet? Whatever the case, Naruto couldn't deny that things were getting more interesting by the day. Naruto watched Adrian disappear down the street, his thoughts drifting to a place he hadn't visited in a while. A birthday party, something as simple as that, was being denied to Adrian. And yet, somehow, it didn't seem unfamiliar to Naruto. Growing up as the heir of his clan had come with its own set of restrictions. Until he was 12, he wasn't even allowed to freely talk to other kids. By the time those restrictions eased, the damage had already been done. The other children in his clan had learned to keep their distance, leaving him excluded before he even had a chance to connect. Then came 13. The moment he awakened his chakra, everything shifted again. His training intensified, and any friendships that could have been formed drifted further out of reach. Sure, he had gone to school for a few years before coming to Paris, but even then, making friends had never been easy. Maybe a few close ones here and there, but he never stayed in one place long enough to build something lasting. His clan's expectations always pulled him away, year after year. "Hey! You good?" Naruto blinked, snapping back to reality as Nino waved a hand in front of his face. "Sorry," Naruto said, rubbing the back of his head sheepishly. Nino grinned. "Wanna come with me to Adrian's place? I still think we should try talking to his dad." Naruto hesitated before nodding. "Yeah, sure." But as they started walking, a nagging thought crept in. His family had been strict, and it had pushed him away. Adrian's father was just as strict, if not worse. Would trying to change his mind really do anything, or would it just make things worse? He would make sure things didn't get out of hand. From experience, he knew that when things got worse, they really got worse. The last thing he wanted was for Adrian to get pulled out of school. His friend had already told him how hard it was just to convince his dad to let him attend in the first place. Naruto wasn't about to risk making things even harder for him. The two quickly made their way to Adrian's house, Nino awestruck by its sheer size, while Naruto kept an intrigued smile. This was exactly the kind of place he'd love to explore. He could feel it in his bones. There was definitely something here. The mansion stood tall and pristine, its white exterior accented with black overtones, preventing the design from feeling too sterile. The black gate before them loomed tall, separating the outside world from the life within, too similar to how Adrian had described it during one of his rants. While Naruto's curiosity urged him to explore, the sight only deepened his sympathy for Adrian's situation. Nino, shaking off his awe, pressed the doorbell, triggering an extravagant chime. Naruto couldn't place the melody, but it was distinctly classical. After a few seconds, a sleek, metallic camera extended from the wall. Naruto immediately took note. This kind of tech wasn't even available to the public yet, which meant Adrian's father had some serious connections. A robotic yet distinctly human female voice echoed from the speaker, devoid of emotion. "State your business." Naruto glanced at Nino, who suddenly looked uneasy. With a reassuring tap on his shoulder, Naruto watched as his friend straightened up before facing the camera. We're friends of Adrian," Nino said, his voice wavering slightly. "We wanted to see if we could talk to his dad, ma'am." "I will see what I can do," the voice responded, still flat and emotionless. Naruto turned to Nino, concern flickering in his eyes. "You okay?" Nino let out a sheepish chuckle, rubbing the back of his head. "I guess the dude's status was getting to me. I want Adrian to have his party, but I don't want to make things worse, you know?" Naruto smiled at that. Nino was thinking about Adrian too. He was a good friend. But that raised the question, if both of them were already worried about making things worse, just how bad could this really get? Before Naruto could dwell on it, the gate clicked open. The camera retracted, and the doors slowly swung inward, revealing the mansion's vast courtyard. "Guess we're in," Naruto muttered. Nino took a deep breath and stepped forward, Naruto following beside him. The path leading up to the mansion was lined with perfectly trimmed hedges and a pristine fountain at the center, its waters flowing in a rhythmic pattern that seemed almost too controlled. As they approached the main entrance, the large double doors opened automatically, revealing an elegant foyer. The floors gleamed under the chandelier's glow, and at the base of a grand staircase stood a woman dressed in a strict black suit, her posture impeccable. Nino whispered to Naruto, "Is it just me, or does she look kinda intense?" Before Naruto could respond, the woman spoke, her tone sharp and professional. "I am Natalie, Monsieur Agreste's assistant. Follow me. She turned without another word, leading them deeper into the house. Naruto and Nino exchanged glances before stepping inside, the doors closing behind them with an ominous finality. Naruto kept his usual easygoing demeanor, but internally, he remained on guard. Something about this place felt off. He wasn't sure if it was the eerie silence, the way everything seemed so pristine, or the underlying tension in the air. One thing was certain, this wasn't just a home. It was a cage, and Adrian was trapped inside it. The two boys followed Natalie through the grand halls of the Agresti mansion. Every step echoed through the polished floors, the silence weighing on them. Naruto kept his hands in his pockets, glancing around as they walked. Everything was so pristine, so lifeless. It was nothing like the warm, chaotic energy he was used to back home, or even in the bakery where he was staying. Nino, on the other hand, was trying his best to keep his cool, but Naruto could tell he was nervous. His friend wasn't usually the type to get shaken up, but something about this place, about Gabriel Agresti, was really getting to him. Eventually, they stopped in front of a large door. And Natalie turned to face them. "Monsieur Agresti has agreed to speak with you," she said, her tone as flat as ever. "But I advise you to keep it brief, he does not have time for unnecessary matters." Naruto narrowed his eyes slightly. Unnecessary matters, it's his own son's birthday. Before he could say anything, the doors opened, and inside stood Gabriel Agresti himself. He was dressed sharply, as expected, his posture stiff and authoritative. His piercing gaze landed on them immediately. The air around the man as he walked down each step grew, and the pressure just from his pure presence began to get to Naruto. Nino swallowed hard, but he stood his ground. Hi, dude, sir. Thank you for seeing us." Gabriel said nothing, simply staring at them as if already judging whether this conversation was worth his time. Naruto tilted his head slightly, observing the man in front of him. He had met plenty of strict figures in his life, but Gabriel Agresti was different. He wasn't just strict, he was distant, closed off. Like a wall that had been built over time and reinforced with every passing year. Finally, Gabriel spoke. "What is it you wish to discuss? Adrian isn't yet back from fencing." Nino took a deep breath. We wanted to talk about Adrian's birthday. We think he should be allowed to have a party. He works hard, does everything you ask, and that is not up for discussion," Gabriel interrupted coldly. Naruto frowned. "Why not, dude? Sir, he done so much already, just this one party won't do anything." Gabriel's gaze shifted to him, "Because I said so." Naruto's irritation flared, but he kept his expression neutral. "That's not really an answer, it's just an order." Gabriel's eyes narrowed slightly, but he didn't react otherwise. Nino quickly stepped in. "Sir, we're not trying to disrespect you or anything, but Adrian deserves to have fun, to be around friends. He's lonely." Gabriel's expression remained unreadable. "Adrian has everything he needs." Naruto clenched his jaw. "No, he doesn't." The room fell silent. Gabriel's gaze lingered on Naruto for a long moment, and Naruto held it without flinching. "You're new here," Gabriel finally said. "I suggest you do not involve yourself in things you don't understand." Naruto felt something deep in his chest tighten, something familiar. He had heard words like that before, from people in his clan who thought they knew what was best for him, who had kept him isolated for years. But he wasn't that kid anymore. He exhaled slowly, forcing himself to stay calm. "I might be new, but I understand one thing, Adrian is a good person. And good people deserve to be happy." Gabriel didn't respond right away. Instead, his eyes narrowed and his frown deepened when looking at the two. I decide what Adrian needs, and I am beginning to decide that you two are a bad influence. Wait, what? You can't do that, shouted Nino, his frustration reaching his face as he clenched his fist. Escort them out, Gabriel said blankly, causing Natalie. Naruto expected as much. Nino sighed in frustration but didn't argue. Come on, man, he muttered to Naruto as they turned to leave. As they walked back toward the entrance, Naruto could still feel Gabriel's gaze on his back. He had dealt with strict people before, but something about this man unsettled him. Something told him that there was more going on here than just an overprotective father. As the heavy doors of the mansion slammed shut behind them, the sound echoed in Naruto's ears. The gate followed with an equally forceful clang, locking them out just as quickly as they had been let in. Naruto turned to Nino, expecting some kind of reaction, but his friend just stood there, his narrowed gaze fixed on the ground. His fists were clenched at his sides, his entire body tense with frustration. Nino, Naruto started, his voice calm, trying to ease the tension. I know that sucked, but that guy is unbelievable, Nino cut him off, his voice low but brimming with anger. Like, seriously, how does Adrian live like this? His dad doesn't care about what he wants at all. Naruto sighed, placing a hand on Nino's shoulder. I get it, man. Trust me, I do. But Nino just shook him off. No, dude, you don't get it. You see how Adrian acts, the guy barely knows how to have a conversation like a normal person. Everything was yes, father, no, father, like he was some kind of robot, and he's just coming out of that and his father can't even allow one little party. Naruto didn't flinch, but inside, the words hit a little too close to home. I thought, maybe if we talked to him, he'd actually listen, Nino went on, his frustration spilling out in his words. But no, of course not, the guy's a control freak. He doesn't care about Adrian, not really. Before Naruto could respond, Nino let out a harsh sigh and turned away. I need some air, I'll catch you later, man. And just like that, he stormed off, leaving Naruto standing there, watching his retreating figure. Naruto exhaled through his nose, glancing back at the looming mansion behind him. His instincts told him that this wasn't just about strict parenting. There was something else going on here, something that made his skin crawl the longer he thought about it. But for now, there was nothing he could do. Shoving his hands into his pockets, Naruto turned and made his way back into the city. Naruto sighed as he made his way home, hands stuffed into his pockets. Nino's frustration was understandable. And honestly, Naruto felt it too. The whole situation with Adrian's dad rubbed him the wrong way. The more he thought about it, the more something didn't add up. Strict parenting was one thing, but isolating Adrian to this extent, that was something else entirely. By the time he reached the bakery, his earlier thoughts had somewhat quieted, enough for him to think on something else. He slipped inside, shaking off the water before heading upstairs to his temporary room. Marinette was already there, sitting at her desk, doodling in her sketchbook. She glanced up when he entered, offering a small smile before quickly looking back down. He smiled back, though she didn't seem to notice. Too focused on her sketchbook. Turning away, he moved to his side of the room, setting down his bag before reaching for a few books. Then, without hesitation, he grabbed his shinobi scroll and unfurled it, eyes scanning over various jutsu. The next villain in Paris could show up at any moment, and they still had Hawk Moth to deal with. 2 jutsu weren't going to cut it, not in the long run. Shadow clones were useful, but relying on them alone would eventually do more harm than good. He needed options, more techniques to handle different situations. Maybe genjutsu? No, He'd never been good at it, not since he first awakened his chakra. That was something one of his descendants might have better luck with. Taijutsu, then? A solid fighting style to complement his agility? Or maybe he should focus on elemental jutsu, build up his control over fire, water, and earth to round out his combat abilities. Weapons training could be useful too, he had more than enough stored in his scrolls. Tapping the seal trigger on the scroll, he shifted the selection of jutsu in front of him. His gaze landed on one category that immediately caught his attention: sealing arts. It made sense. Sealing techniques were incredibly powerful. They were the reason this scroll even existed in the first place, allowing it to contain the knowledge of countless jutsu. They also made it possible to store entire arsenals inside small, portable scrolls. If there was any technique that could truly change the way he fought, it was this one. He needed to learn it, it would be invaluable for everything to come. Naruto made note of 3 elemental jutsu: fire, water, and earth, choosing them to give himself better versatility in battle. Instead of jumping into the more complex techniques, he'd start with the basics. He also moved the sealing category to the front of his scroll, ensuring it would be one of the first things he focused on. With that settled, he leaned back, momentarily lost in thought, until he felt Marinette's gaze on him. Every so often, she would glance up from her sketchbook, only to quickly look away when she noticed him moving. Amused, Naruto pretended not to notice, but the corners of his lips twitched upward. "Talk to her, brat," a voice whispered, laced with amusement. Naruto let out an annoyed sigh, glancing down at his lap. There, nestled behind his book, was Kurama, curled up in his small spirit form, a smug grin stretching across his maw. If anyone ever saw the fox like this, tiny, with his 10 tails flicking lazily behind him, they'd never believe the deep, rumbling voice that came from him. Luckily, Kurama was well hidden. If Marinette glanced over again, she wouldn't see the little furball perched on his lap. Naruto turned to her briefly, she was still focused on her sketchbook, completely unaware. Then, shifting his gaze back to Kurama, he shot him a half-annoyed look before muttering under his breath, careful to keep his voice low. Naruto sighed, barely glancing down as Kurama's small spirit form lounged on his lap, his many tails flicking lazily. The fox's deep voice did not match his deceptively cute form. "What for?" Naruto muttered under his breath, keeping his book angled to hide Kurama from view. Kurama scoffed, "You humans never know anything." Naruto rolled his eyes, "Gee, thanks. That clears it up." Kurama gave him a pointed look. "You need to talk to her so you can talk to her, Kwami." "Oh." Naruto frowned, glancing toward Marinette, who was still focused on her sketchbook. "What, you think they know something about Hawk Moth?" Kurama's tails twitched. "Maybe, or maybe they know something even more interesting." Naruto raised an eyebrow, like. Kurama smirked, "You'll never know if you don't ask." Besides, he stretched, looking far too amused. "You should ask her out." Naruto nearly dropped his book. "What? No, we're just friends." Kurama's grin widened, "Sure you are." "We are," Naruto insisted, keeping his voice low. "We've only known each other for, what, a week, there's no way she'd date me, not that I'm worried about that right now." Kurama snorted, "Idiot." Naruto scowled, "I'm not an idiot." "Yes, you are." Naruto ignored him, instead glancing at Marinette again. She was still sketching, her brows furrowed in deep concentration. For a moment, he hesitated. Then, before he could overthink it, he leaned forward slightly, "Hey." Marinette blinked, looking up. "Huh?" Naruto grinned, "You've been sneaking looks at me all evening. If you wanna stare, at least make it less obvious." Marinette's eyes widened, before she practically squeaked out her answer. What? I wasn't, I was just. Naruto chuckled, relax, I'm just messing with you. Marinette huffed, crossing her arms. Not funny. Naruto leaned back, his grin softening. But really, I wanted to ask you something. She blinked, tilting her head. Oh? Naruto hesitated for only a second. It's about Adrian's dad. Marinette frowned, her playful annoyance fading. Gabriel Agresti? Naruto nodded, yeah, Nino and I went to talk to him today. Or, well, tried to. We got kicked out as quickly as we got in, Nino got pissed and stormed off. Marinette's frown deepened, that bad? Naruto sighed. Adrian's dad is strict. Like, way more than normal, it doesn't sit right with me. He rubbed the back of his neck, I dunno, I guess I just don't like the idea of my friend being stuck in a place that feels more like a prison than a home. Marinette bit her lip. I mean, even after only talking to him last week, I guess it seems obvious that his dad is strict. From what he says about only being in this school this year, Adrian's home life must not be great. She hesitated, a small frown being edged on her face as she thought about her favorite fashion designer. What, are you planning to look into it? Naruto shrugged, not like I have much else to do. And I dunno, something about it just bugs me. Kurama made a noise in his mind, something almost approving. Marinette studied him for a moment, then smiled slightly. You're a good friend, you know that? Naruto blinked, caught off guard. For some reason, that made his face feel a little warm. He coughed, looking away. Yeah, well, somebody's gotta keep an eye on that guy. Marinette giggled. Well, if you need help, I might know a thing or two about Gabriel Agresti's, best fashion designer in Paris. Naruto smirked. Oh, seems like you really admire the man. Marinette puffed up. I'll have you know he is my favorite designer, and I will be a designer just like him. Or well, I guess not exactly now, she let out her own giggle, which made Naruto laugh. Kurama sighed in his mind, hopeless, absolutely hopeless. But this was the opening he needed. His old friend Tiki had some explaining to do. How long had it been since he last spoke to a Kwami, or any spirit, for that matter? Either way, he needed to talk to Tiki about the current situation. As Naruto and Marinette continued their conversation, Kurama took the opportunity to slip away. With a small flick of his tails, the fox-like spirit floated off Naruto's lap, effortlessly maneuvering through the air. His movements were silent, careful not to draw Marinette's attention as she remained focused on Naruto. Drifting toward the hidden Kwami, Kurama's sharp eyes quickly spotted Tiki nestled in the shadows. She was just as concealed as he had been, but compared to his fox-like form, she looked more like a tiny doll, small, round, and delicate. If someone glanced at them side by side, they might mistake Kurama for a small, mischievous dog while Tiki seemed like a figurine brought to life. But to those who knew the truth, the two spirits carried wisdom far beyond their appearance. Kurama hovered just in front of her, his piercing red eyes gleaming with amusement. Took you long enough to notice me, he murmured, his deep voice a stark contrast to his current small form. Tiki's tiny blue eyes narrowed slightly as Kurama settled in front of her, his many tails swaying lazily behind him. Though it had been a long time since they had last spoken, there was no mistaking the familiarity in the way they regarded each other, like two old beings who had witnessed more than their fair share of history. You've been quiet, Kurama noted, his voice carrying a weight of knowing. Didn't even make yourself known to Naruto when he first showed up. That's unlike you, Tiki. Tiki's tiny arms crossed over her chest. And you didn't tell him about me either, she countered. I assume you had your reasons, same as I had mine. Kurama let out a low hum, his eyes flicking toward Naruto and Marinette, who were still deep in conversation. Fair, but I need answers. Tiki, what happened to the butterfly Miraculous, to Nuru? Tiki sighed, floating a little closer. It's complicated. Nuru's Miraculous fell into the wrong hands, and now he's bound to someone unworthy. You've probably figured that out. Kurama's tails flicked, his expression darkening. Well, that's confirmation. A Miraculous that shouldn't have been in play, now in the hands of someone dangerous. Tiki nodded solemnly. It's worse than that, Kurama. Whoever Hawk Moth is, he's been using the butterfly Miraculous to create akumas, corrupted creatures that feed off negative emotions. It's not just a matter of him being unworthy. He's actively twisting Nuru's power for something terrible. Kurama let out a low growl. And the Guardians, where are they in all of this? Tiki hesitated. Gone, lost during the destruction of the temple. Master Fu is the last of the Guardians, and he's been in hiding for decades. He's the one who gave Marinette her Miraculous. Kurama scoffed, shaking his head. The last Guardian, giving away Miraculous to children. I don't know whether to call that desperation or foresight. Tiki frowned. She's more capable than you think, Kurama. Ladybug and Chat Noir have already saved Paris once. You of all spirits should know that power isn't always tied to experience. Kurama exhaled sharply but didn't argue the point. Instead, his gaze flicked back toward Naruto, his expression unreadable. I do need to tell you that Naruto has figured it out, he said after a moment. That Marinette is Ladybug. Tiki tensed. He has? Tiki's gaze remained steady as she took in Kurama's words. Despite their long history, there was always a sense of unpredictability when dealing with him. He wasn't like the other Kwamis, his presence wasn't tied to the natural flow of miraculous magic, nor was he created in the same manner. He was something else entirely. Something beyond even the magic that governed her existence. Do you mean he can see through the magic because of you? Tiki finally said. It would be the only explanation for how he would figure it out so fast. And the bond between you and Naruto runs deeper than just spirit and host. Your chakras are merged, interwoven in a way that no illusion could ever deceive. Kurama smirked. Exactly, you miraculous lot rely on tricks and perception filters, but that kind of thing doesn't work on us. Genjutsu, illusions, false identities, none of it matters when you've got the Kwami of Change's chakra in your system. That's why he figured out Marinette was Ladybug without any real effort. Tiki frowned. That could be dangerous, Kurama, if someone else like him, someone with a similar power, were to come across the miraculous, they could unravel everything we've built to keep the balance. Kurama's ears twitched, his expression thoughtful. You're worried about something. Tiki hesitated, but eventually, she sighed. I haven't told Marinette everything, she's not ready for the full truth. Kurama chuckled. So even you're keeping secrets, and here I thought you were all about honesty and guidance. Tiki shot him a look. This isn't a matter of deception, Kurama, it's about responsibility. There's more to the miraculous than just a battle between good and evil. There are histories, dangers, truths that could shake everything Marinette believes in. I need to make sure she's ready before I tell her. Kurama huffed. You sound like me now. Tiki shook her head. You and I both know knowledge is a heavy burden. If Naruto learned too much too soon, what do you think he would do? Kurama didn't answer right away. Instead, he let his many tails sway lazily behind him, deep in thought. He'd take it all on himself, he admitted. Try to fix everything, no matter the cost. Tiki nodded. And if Marinette knew everything, if she understood the full weight of what being Ladybug means? Kurama exhaled sharply. She'd hesitate, or worse, she'd break under it. A long silence stretched between them before Kurama finally said, "There's one more thing we haven't talked about." Tiki tilted her head, "What?" Kurama's expression grew serious, "The fact that someone, or something, is moving behind the scenes. Something bigger than Hawk Moth." Tiki's eyes widened, "What do you mean?" Kurama's tails bristled. "I don't know yet, but ever since Naruto got here, I've had this feeling, this instinct, like something's watching. Something that shouldn't be here." Tiki floated closer, her usual cheerful demeanor replaced with concern. "Do you think it's connected to the Miraculous?" Kurama's gaze darkened, "That's what I intend to find out." For a moment, the two fell into a quiet lull, the distant sound of the two teens' conversation filling the room. If something bigger than Hawk Moth was out there, something lurking beyond their current battle, how would they face it? Tiki's gaze softened before shifting back to curiosity. There was one last thing she needed to address, something that had been lingering in her mind since he first spoke of it. Tiki floated closer, her small form barely making a ripple in the air as she tilted her head at Kurama. "It's been a long time, hasn't it?" she mused. "How have you been?" Kurama's ears flicked as he settled more comfortably, his tails curling slightly around him. "Fine," he said easily, though his deep voice still carried its usual gruffness. Then, with a smirk, he added, "The quality of change is at 100%, as always." Tiki huffed a quiet laugh. "Still calling yourself that?" Kurama grinned, baring his fangs just slightly. "Hey, I didn't choose the title. It was given to me, and it stuck." For a moment, the two fell into a comfortable silence, the distant murmur of the two teens' conversation filling the room. If something bigger than Hawk Moth was out there, something lurking beyond their current battle, how would they face it? Tiki's gaze softened before shifting back to curiosity. There was one last thing she needed to address, something that had been lingering in her mind since he first spoke of it. "You've always been different from us," she said, studying him carefully. "You weren't tied to a Miraculous when you came into existence. You never needed a holder. Even though you're a spirit, you weren't bound like the rest of us." Kurama gave a slow nod, his expression unreadable. "That's because I wasn't born from an idea alone. You and the others came into existence when humanity first conceptualized your domains: creation, destruction, luck, misfortune, and all the rest. But me? I came from something else entirely. The shinobi world didn't just think of change, it lived it. It fought, burned, crumbled, and rose again. That chaos wasn't just a concept, it was a force. And from that force, I was born." Tiki clasped her hands together. "So you were never meant to follow the same rules." Kurama's smirk returned, sharp and knowing. "Exactly, I don't need a Miraculous to define me, and I don't have the same limitations you do. That's why I can see past the veils, past the illusions that keep others blind." Tiki nodded slowly, as if reaffirming something she had long suspected. "It also means you're harder to predict." Kurama chuckled, "That's what makes it fun." The room fell into another pause, but this time, Kurama let his thoughts drift deeper. Change. That was what he was, what he had always been. It wasn't just a title, it was his essence. From the moment he had first come into existence, the world had been shifting, breaking, rebuilding itself. He was a product of that endless cycle, a force that refused to be contained. And yet. He glanced at Tiki, his gaze narrowing ever so slightly. There was still something off about all of this. Not about his origins, he knew exactly what he was, but about the bigger picture. The hidden pieces of this game they were all playing. He wasn't bound by the same rules as the other Kwamis, but even he could feel the weight of something moving beyond their understanding. Whatever it is. It won't stay in the shadows forever. Kurama's tails flicked, his grin returning. And when it steps into the light, I'll be ready. Kurama's tails flicked lazily as he studied Tiki, his sharp crimson eyes glinting with amusement. So, are you going to tell her? Tiki blinked. Tell who what? Kurama huffed. Marinette, about Naruto, about who he really is. His smirk widened, but there was something knowing beneath it. You and I both know he isn't just some traveler passing through. Tiki sighed, floating back slightly as her tiny hands clasped together. I know who he is, Kurama, but that doesn't mean it's time for Marinette to know. Kurama let out a low chuckle. You're holding back a lot from her. Aren't you? Tiki gave him a small, tired smile. And you're not? For a moment, neither spoke. The weight of unspoken truths sat between them, a silent understanding shared between two ancient beings who had both seen too much. Kurama exhaled through his nose, his grin turning slightly wry. Fair enough, his eyes gleamed with something unreadable. But you know it won't stay hidden forever, she'll figure it out. Tiki nodded. Maybe, but not yet. Kurama rolled his eyes but didn't press further. He knew how this game worked. Some secrets were meant to be revealed in their own time. Still, he couldn't help but wonder, when the truth did come out, how would Marinette handle it? And more importantly, how would Naruto? The conversation ended with that, both slipping back into hiding, Tiki in plain sight, small and unassuming, while Kurama melded seamlessly back into Naruto's being, his presence retreating like a fading ember. Naruto didn't bother asking what Kurama had learned. If it was important, the fox would tell him. Right now, it didn't matter. What did matter was the conversation he had just finished. Talking with Marinette had been nice. It wasn't something he had expected when he first arrived in Paris, but she had a way of making things easier to say, even things he didn't realize he needed to let out. He liked talking to her, really talking. Not just about heroes and villains, but about life. Still, one question lingered in his mind. Why had she been following him, although he wasn't sure if he wanted the answer? Before he could dwell on it any further, a piercing scream tore through the bakery, freezing both him and Marinette in place. Their eyes locked for a fraction of a second before they bolted toward the source of the noise. It was coming from downstairs. Naruto's instincts flared, his senses sharpening as they rushed toward the sound. Then he saw it. Through the windows, floating in the dim glow of the streetlights, two giant bubbles rising into the night sky. And inside them, were Marinette's parents. The blonde could only watch as Marinette's parents were swept away, their panicked cries fading as they vanished into the sky. Beside him, Marinette lurched forward, arm outstretched, fingers grasping at nothing but air. No. She gasped, her voice tight with fear. Naruto clenched his fists, instinct screaming at him to act, but they were gone before either of them could do anything. He turned to Marinette, who was already spinning on her heel, frantic. I have to go. She blurted out, looking around as if searching for an excuse, a way to slip away. Naruto saw the panic in her eyes, the war waging within her. She needed to transform, but with him standing right there, she couldn't. Marinette. His voice was firm yet steady, grounding. She snapped her head toward him, startled. I'll go after them, he said. You stay here and make sure no one else gets caught. Marinette hesitated, caught between her duty as Ladybug and the fact that Naruto, who wasn't supposed to know anything, was willing to throw himself into danger. But, I've got this, he assured her, already stepping toward the open window. His expression softened just a fraction. Trust me. For a moment, she looked like she wanted to argue. Then, pressing her lips together, she gave a short nod. Be careful. Naruto flashed a confident grin, one he wasn't sure he fully felt, before turning and slipping out the door. He had already planned his next move. Marinette wouldn't transform in front of him, so he had to disappear from her sight. Once she thought he was gone, Fire Shadow and Ladybug would coincidentally meet. In the hallway, he unsealed his gear, revealing a sleek, sleeveless black jumpsuit with a built-in half mask. 2 orange stripes ran from the sides of the baggy pants, tracing up to the chest and continuing along the mask in a striking design. Next, he equipped his black gloves with metal plating and matching boots, both accented with subtle orange details. The color was minimal, just enough to nod to his lineage while keeping him stealthy. Naruto reached for the final piece, his black and orange jacket. The very same one he had worn in his first battle alongside Ladybug and Chat Noir. He slipped it on, leaving it unzipped, the more intricate orange accents giving it a signature look. He adjusted his hood, putting it on, hiding more of himself than the mask already did. Rolling up his sleeves neatly as he checked his gear. The suit wasn't just for show. Hidden seals regulated temperature, reinforced durability, and allowed instant weapon access through specialized patches. His family had also made him a simple watch, hidden under one of his gloves. The seals on it would allow him to remove or equip the suit in mere seconds. All of this only made him want to study seal creation even more. With everything in place, Naruto adjusted his hood and leaped out the nearest window, landing smoothly on a rooftop. His sharp eyes took in the chaos below. Time to move. Naruto shifted to another rooftop, crouching low as he scanned the chaotic scene below. More adults drifted aimlessly in shimmering bubbles, their faces frozen in confusion and panic. His sharp gaze caught something unusual, bubbles not carrying people, but playing recorded messages. He leaped down, snatching one midair before it popped. A holographic image flickered to life, revealing a figure standing confidently, a mischievous grin on his face. Another akumatized victim. The villain's suit was oddly rounded in places. Designed almost like a bubble itself. Blue skin, a visor covering his eyes, and a comically oversized cylindrical sheath strapped to his back, holding a sword shaped like a bubble wand. Red, blue, and yellow dominated his color scheme, further adding to the almost childish, playful aesthetic. Naruto frowned, there was something eerily familiar about him. Then, it clicked, Nino. The blue skin might have masked his features, but everything else, the stance, the attitude, even the damn bubbles, screamed his friend's name. And Naruto had a pretty good guess why. No time to dwell on it now. If Nino had been akumatized, there was only one place he'd go. Before everything went down. All he wanted was to throw Adrian a party. Naruto let the bubble drift from his hand, already moving. Then that's where he'll be. Without hesitation, he leaped toward the Agresti mansion. Naruto landed on the outskirts of the Agresti estate, crouching atop the iron gate as he took in the scene below. The party was outside, sprawling across the grand courtyard, bathed in colorful lights and pulsing music. Bubbles floated everywhere, catching the light like miniature prisms. At first glance, it looked like a normal party, until he noticed the rigid movements of his classmates. The kids from school were all here, forced into the celebration. They danced in a synchronized rhythm, their movements too stiff, too unnatural. Some tried to stop, only for floating bubbles to nudge them back into motion, preventing any escape. The energy of the party was forced, suffocating, and the culprit stood at his own stand as the DJ. This isn't Nino, at least not at the moment. Naruto knew why his friend had been akumatized. The guy just wanted Adrian to have a birthday party, one where he could be free for once. And now, under Hawk Moth's influence, he'd taken that desire too far. His eyes flicked toward Adrian, who stood stiffly near the edge of the party, not dancing but not resisting either. That meant he was looking for a way out, probably to transform. Good. That meant Ladybug had to be close as well. Still, Naruto couldn't wait around for them. Time to get to work, Naruto muttered under his mask. He leaped into the air, eyes locking onto Nino's equipment. With a flick of his wrist, a shuriken appeared in his hand. He hurled it mid-air, knocking aside the stand supporting the villain's bubbles. Without hesitation, he summoned several more, the blades gleaming as they sliced through the shimmering spheres trapping the students. The moment the bubbles popped, the kids stumbled back, momentarily dazed before realizing they were free. Naruto landed in the center of the crowd, smirking as he crossed his arms. Hate to be a party pooper, but this party's over. The scattered teens didn't waste their chance. Though none ran completely out of the area, most gravitated toward the mansion's front, putting as much distance as possible between themselves and the battle. Out of the corner of his eye, Naruto caught Adrian slipping away, hopefully to transform. "Why you gotta be like that?" Bubbler huffed, gripping his oversized bubble wand. With a swing, he unleashed a barrage of glowing red bubbles straight at Naruto. The blonde stood firm, summoning a chained kunai in his grip. With practiced ease, he spun the weapon, tearing through the bubbles before they could reach him. The attack dissipated in seconds, leaving Nino open for a counter. Naruto seized the opportunity, launching himself forward as his chained kunai shot out, aiming to snag the villain and pull him in. But Nino dodged at the last second, sending another wave of bubbles his way. "You really think you can stop me? Even when Ladybug and Chat Noir get here, you won't stand a chance. The bubbler is unstoppable." Naruto landed lightly on the mansion's railing, shaking his head in amusement. "Seriously? The bubbler, that's the best Hawk Moth could come up with, and what's with the third-person thing? Is that a villain requirement, or do you guys just like hearing yourselves talk?" Nino's face twisted in annoyance. Instead of responding, he lunged, swinging his bubble sword in a swift arc. Naruto blocked the strike with his kunai, but another attack followed immediately. A slash at his legs, blocked. A strike toward his arms, parried. Then a swipe at his chest. Over and over, Bubbler pressed forward in a relentless assault, forcing Naruto on the defensive. Each strike was fast, but not unpredictable. Naruto's smirk returned. He had been testing Nino's attacks, watching for patterns. And now it was his turn to go on the offensive. Naruto dashed forward, kunai spinning in his hand as he aimed for the massive bubble trapping his classmates. He slashed at it, expecting it to pop like the others, but instead, the blade bounced off, sending a ripple through the surface like a stone skipping across water. TCH, his brows furrowed, that wasn't normal. Before he could test another angle, Nino lunged again, his bubble wand swinging. Naruto barely ducked in time, feeling the air shift above his head as the attack whizzed past. "Come on, dude, just chill," Nino grinned, twirling his wand effortlessly. "I'm throwing the best party Paris has ever seen." Naruto straightened, his kunai still firm in his grip. "Yeah, funny, 'cause all I see is you trapping people who didn't ask to be here." Bubbler's grin faltered. "That's not," he scowled, jabbing his wand forward. "They need this, adults are always bossing us around, telling us what to do, what we can't do, this is freedom." Naruto blinked. The word struck something in him. He thought back to how Nino had been frustrated earlier. How he had just wanted to do something for Adrian, only to be shut down by adults who didn't care. "I get it," Naruto said, lowering his weapon slightly. "You just wanted to throw your best friend a party, and no one listened, that sucked, right?" Bubbler hesitated, gripping his wand tighter. But this isn't the way, Naruto continued. Look at them, he motioned to the trapped students, their eyes wide with unease. This isn't freedom, they're just stuck, waiting for someone to tell them what to do next. For a moment, something flickered in Nino's expression, doubt. But then he scowled, no, you're just like them, trying to tell me I'm wrong. The hesitation vanished, and with a wave of his wand, Bubbler sent another barrage of bubbles flying toward Naruto. Naruto cursed under his breath and leaped back, deflecting what he could with his kunai, but there were too many. A sudden blur of black and green landed beside him. Gotta say, I like the new look, Chatnoir quipped, twirling his staff as he took position next to Naruto. Going for a mysterious ninja hero vibe? Naruto rolled his shoulders, smirking beneath his mask. Something like that. Another figure landed gracefully on Naruto's other side, Ladybug, her yo-yo spinning at the ready. Less talking, more fighting, boys. Naruto grinned, was wondering when you'd show up. The three of them charged together, forcing Bubbler onto the defensive. Ladybug's yo-yo snapped out, trying to snag his wand, while Chatnoir weaved in and out with quick, precise staff strikes. Naruto kept the pressure up from the opposite side, forcing Nino to divide his attention. For a moment, it seemed like they had the upper hand. But then, Bubbler grinned. You three really think you can crash my party? He raised his wand high, and before any of them could react, bubbles exploded outward in all directions. You three really think you can crash my party? Bubbler taunted, his grin widening. He raised his wand high, and in an instant, bubbles exploded outward in all directions. Naruto's eyes flickered as he twisted his body, narrowly slipping through the first wave. He landed low, kunai flashing as he deflected the smaller bubbles. Chatnoir spun his staff, knocking some away, while Ladybug flipped gracefully over an incoming barrage, her yo-yo lashing out. Bubbler shot forward, aiming for Naruto first. His wand whipped downward, sending a concentrated burst of bubbles at point-blank range. Naruto crossed his arms, bracing himself. The force sent him skidding back across the rooftop. He dug his heels in, flipping mid-slide to absorb the impact before launching back at Bubbler, kunai slashing toward the wand. Clang, the blade struck the shaft of the wand, but instead of knocking it away, Bubbler countered with a swift twirl, twisting the weapon out of Naruto's reach. Nice try, dude, but I've got all the party tricks, Bubbler declared, flipping backward. Ladybug landed beside Naruto, her eyes sharp. Keep him occupied, we'll find an opening. On it, Naruto muttered. They split off again, Chatnoir vaulting over Bubbler, coming down with a powerful strike aimed at his wrist. Bubbler twisted in midair, avoiding the blow, but barely had time to react before Ladybug's yo-yo snapped out, wrapping around his leg. Yes, she yanked hard, pulling him off balance. Naruto took the chance. He surged forward, chakra flaring beneath his feet as he lunged. His kunai cut through the air, inches from the corrupted item when, not so fast. A massive wave of bubbles erupted from Bubbler's body, forcing all three heroes to retreat. Naruto slashed through the ones closest to him, but they absorbed the impact, wobbling instead of popping. Come on, he growled. Chatnoir was the first to try another approach, flipping off the ground and bringing his staff down in a crushing strike. Bubbler barely dodged in time, twisting away. He countered by twirling his wand, launching a dozen bubbles in rapid succession. One clipped Chatnoir's leg, his eyes widened as it latched on, rapidly expanding. Oh, before he could react, the bubble engulfed him entirely, lifting him off the ground. Chat, Ladybug cried, but before she could intervene, another set of bubbles surged toward her. She twisted, trying to break free, but one latched onto her hand, dragging her yo-yo away. Another wrapped around her waist, cutting off her movement entirely. Damn it, Naruto whipped his head around, seeing both of his allies floating helplessly in their bubbles. He didn't have time to think. He rushed Bubbler again, kunai poised to strike, but Bubbler was ready. A bubble detonated at Naruto's feet. The force sent him hurtling backward, skidding across the rooftop. He barely recovered in time to see Bubbler lift his wand once more. Sorry Fire Shadow, looks like you're the only one not on the guest list. With a flick of his wand, the bubbles containing the students, and Ladybug and Chat Noir, began to rise, lifting higher and higher into the sky. Naruto's eyes widened, no. He pushed forward, arms reaching, but Bubbler shot upward, riding a stream of shimmering bubbles as he floated away with his captives. Naruto clenched his fists, watching his friends drift further into the sky. Alright, he exhaled sharply, gaze hardening. Time for Plan B. With that, he launched himself into pursuit. Naruto's mind raced as he watched the bubbles float higher and higher. If he didn't act fast, his classmates, and his teammates, would be lost in the sky. His hands flew into a familiar seal. Shadow Clone Jutsu. In a burst of smoke, 3 identical copies of him appeared beside him on the rooftop. You two, go after the students, Naruto ordered, pointing toward the largest bubble cluster. Make sure they don't drift too far. The clones nodded, immediately taking off across the rooftops, leaping toward the rising bubbles. The last clone turned to him expectantly. Naruto smirked, you know the drill. His clone crouched low, cupping its hands together. Naruto stepped onto them, bending his knees. Go! With a powerful push, the clone launched Naruto into the air. Another clone materialized midair, catching him and throwing him even higher. A third clone did the same. And then another, each one propelling him further into the sky, higher and higher, until, there. Naruto reached the bubble holding Ladybug and Chat Noir, their forms barely visible inside. He twisted midair, kunai in hand, and slammed it against the surface. Nothing, the bubble rippled but didn't break. TCH, Naruto narrowed his eyes. Figures it wouldn't be that easy. Inside, Ladybug and Chat Noir spotted him. Chat Noir pressed his hands against the bubble's surface. Hey Fire Shadow, not that I don't appreciate the company, but unless you've got a pin, we're kinda stuck in here. Naruto scowled, I was hoping kunai would do the trick, but this thing is sturdy. Ladybug's gaze sharpened. Chat, you still have Cataclysm? Chat Noir blinked before realization struck. Oh, now that's an idea, he grinned and raised his hand. Cataclysm. Dark energy crackled around his fingertips. He pressed his hand against the bubble, and almost instantly, the surface started to dissolve, black cracks spreading outward like shattered glass. Hold on, Naruto warned. The bubble burst. Naruto reacted in an instant, grabbing both Ladybug and Chat Noir as they began to plummet. He twisted midair, flipping them upright as they fell, using his chakra to steady his descent. One last clone appeared below, catching them in time to cushion their landing. They touched down smoothly. Naruto releasing his grip as they skidded to a halt on the rooftop. Ladybug took a deep breath, thanks, Fire Shadow. No problem, Naruto smirked. Not gonna let you guys have all the fun. Chat Noir dusted himself off. I was kinda enjoying the floating thing, Chat Noir said, eyeing Ladybug with a smile, but yeah, definitely better to be back on solid ground. He turned his gaze toward the sky, where Bubbler was still hovering. Now, how about we go burst that guy's bubble? Ladybug nodded, determination setting in. Agreed, no more holding back. Naruto cracked his knuckles, a fire burning in his eyes. Then let's finish this. With that, the three heroes took off after Bubbler once more. The three heroes charged forward, but Bubbler's bubbles were relentless. They kept growing, expanding, and surrounding them at every turn. Naruto dashed to the left, dodging another wave of bubbles that nearly engulfed him, while Chat Noir swung his staff to knock away any bubbles that came too close. Got to do something about these bubbles, Chat Noir grunted, his staff cracking through a large cluster that was headed straight for Ladybug. Ladybug's eyes narrowed, scanning the area. She knew that the wand was the key to stopping Bubbler's bubble barrage, but she needed something to counteract the enormous bubbles still launching at them. "I've got it," she said, her tone sharp with determination. Lucky charm. She flung her yo-yo into the air, and a burst of magic surrounded her. When it cleared, she found herself holding a wrench. "A wrench," she muttered, confused but quickly snapping into action. She didn't have time to question it. "Alright, this'll work." Ladybug scanned the area for her next move. Her eyes locked onto the Eiffel Tower, standing tall against the Paris skyline. With a determined smirk, she darted toward it. "Distract him, guys," she called over her shoulder as she ran. Naruto and Chat Noir leapt into action, launching themselves at Bubbler to keep him occupied. Chat Noir swung his staff expertly, hitting bubbles that blocked the path, while Naruto used his clones to create a whirlwind of confusion around Bubbler. Bubbler laughed maniacally, spinning his wand in a circle to release more bubbles. "Nice try, you can't stop me now." But his words fell on deaf ears. Ladybug had already reached the base of the Eiffel Tower, her eyes locking onto a gas line, one the comically oversized wrench could loosen. If she could disconnect it, the released gas would scatter Bubbler's bubbles, creating the opening they needed to snatch his wand, the obvious hiding place of the Akuma. With swift precision, she wedged the wrench around the valve and twisted. At first, it resisted, but with a determined grunt, she forced it loose. A sharp hiss filled the air as the gas escaped, whipping into the wind and dispersing the clusters of bubbles surrounding them. Up above, Bubbler faltered, his grin slipping as his bubbles, once strong and overwhelming, wobbled and thinned, dissipating into harmless wisps. "What?" he yelped, waving his wand furiously. This was supposed to be the best party ever. Naruto didn't hesitate. With a burst of speed, he lunged forward, weaving through the vanishing bubbles. Chat Noir followed suit, his staff extending as he vaulted through the air. Ladybug, wasting no time, flung her yo-yo toward Bubbler's wand, but he managed to yank it out of reach at the last second. Not so fast, Bubbler spun midair, lashing out with a desperate wave of bubbles, forcing them to dodge. TCH, Naruto skidded to a stop, quickly forming a hand sign. "Guess we're doing this the hard way." In a puff of smoke, two shadow clones appeared beside him. One clone leapt high, aiming straight for Bubbler's blind spot, while the other flanked his side, forcing him to split his attention. Bubbler swung wildly, trying to fend them off, but his bubbles weren't forming fast enough anymore. Naruto's real body surged forward, kunai flashing. Seeing the opening, Ladybug's yo-yo snapped out again, this time wrapping tightly around the wand. "Got it," she cried, yanking hard. The wand flew from Bubbler's grasp, spiraling through the air. Naruto reacted instantly. "Here goes nothing," he lunged, snatching it midair before summoning a kunai and bringing it down. The wand cracked, then shattered into pieces, releasing a small, dark butterfly. Ladybug wasted no time. She swung her yo-yo once more, capturing the Akuma and purifying it in a swirl of red and white. Bubbler gasped, his form flickering as Hawk Moth's influence shattered. His body slumped, the dark energy leaving him, and in a blink, Nino stood in his place, confused, exhausted, and back to normal. The heroine then used her miraculous ladybug. The magic of the Miraculous swept through the city, undoing the chaos, returning the civilians safely to the ground, and restoring everything to the way it was before. Naruto let out a breath, sheathing his kunai. Well, that was a party. Chat Noir chuckled, spinning his staff. And we weren't even on the guest list. Ladybug chuckled, but the moment passed quickly as she turned to Nino with a reassuring smile. You okay? Nino rubbed the back of his head, still dazed from the deacumatization. Yeah. That was a lot. Ladybug gave a small nod before extending her fist toward her teammates. Naruto and Chat Noir met it with their own, their knuckles tapping together in silent victory. A pair of beeps suddenly cut through the air. Both Ladybug and Chat Noir glanced at their Miraculous, their expressions shifting. We better get going, don't want to detransform just yet, Ladybug said, already winding up her yo-yo. Chat Noir shot Naruto a quick salute. See ya around Fire Shadow. And just like that, they were gone, Ladybug soaring into the sky, Chat Noir vanishing into the shadows. Naruto exhaled, shaking his head. He was starting to see a pattern in these fights. Hopefully, not all of them would be this formulaic. He turned to leave, but a sudden prickle at the back of his neck stopped him in his tracks. Instinct. His gaze snapped toward a nearby alley, his sharp eyes scanning the darkness. For a moment, he thought he saw something, someone, but when he focused, there was nothing, just an empty street. Maybe he was imagining things. Still, the uneasy feeling lingered as he leapt onto the rooftops and disappeared into the night. That's it for today. I hoped you liked the video. Please like and subscribe, and comment ideas if you can, and maybe you could share this with your friends, because you never know, they might like what ifs too. So without further ado, all KAGE, out.